Alright guys, the Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for Better Call Saul, Season 4, Episode 10, the finale. Alright, so we have reached an end to Better Call Saul Season 4. Kind of unfortunate, but I really did enjoy this episode. I thought it was a great finale, just a great episode in general. They really did a good job of kind of wrapping things up, right? Wrapping up the main storylines from this season, and also doing a good job in building some new ones for next season as well. With, Lalo and just a whole bunch of stuff with Jimmy. So, or Saul, whichever you want to use. So anyways, so really great episode here. I did really enjoy it. We'll get into a recap here, and I'm going to split this recap into two parts because this episode, again, did a really great job of balancing two parts here in kind of Mike's pursuit of Werner, or whatever, his pursuit of him, and then also Lalo kind of being intertwined in there, and then you get Jimmy and Kim's part in him trying to become a lawyer again. So, gonna split the recap into two here, and I'm gonna talk about Mike first, but yeah, so anyways, love to hear what you guys thought of this one. Let me know in the comments, what you thought of it, anything that, that stood out to you. What are some of your predictions for next season? I'd love to hear it, and let's start discussing. Also, if you like this review, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Really, really would appreciate it. So, anyways, guys, let's get into it. So, let's start with the first little flashback scene at the very beginning of the episode, which I thought was very heartwarming, even emotional as well. So, anyways, so we have a flashback to Jimmy getting admitted to the bar, right, with help from his brother Chuck. And so I'm assuming, so this is like right when he first became a lawyer, and obviously Chuck has been a lawyer for a bit, and he's, pretty well known, pretty, respected in the law, society. And so he helps Jimmy out in getting him into the bar. And so, yeah, so this was a really great scene. We see Jimmy celebrating with Kim at the karaoke bar, right? They're all kind of there celebrating him getting admitted to the bar. And Chuck is kind of sitting there over by himself, not doing anything. And he actually is about to leave, but instead Jimmy actually is able to convince Chuck just to stay a little bit longer, right? Stay a few more minutes as he's going to be performing this karaoke song or whatever. And anyway, so it convinces Chuck then to get up with him, to get up with him on stage, to perform this karaoke song. And this was such a heartwarming scene, honestly. It was great. At the very beginning, Jimmy's totally screwed up the song, which is pretty funny. And then Chuck, of course, comes in, and he actually sounds very good, and he's, trying hard, to sing it well. And then they actually kind of, not harmonize really, because Jimmy is still way out of key and everything, but they both come together, and they sing together on stage, and it was just a really awesome moment. The two brothers kind of side by side singing, or at least doing something together, right? This is something that we never really saw in Better Call Saul, between these two brothers. So I thought it was an awesome, emotional moment. And then it gets even better when Chuck actually takes Jimmy home after he's had a little bit too much to drink, of course. And he's about to leave Jimmy in the bed and go home. But instead, he stays with his brother and lays beside him in the bed. And then, while the two are trying to get to sleep, Jimmy starts singing the song again, and then both of the brothers start singing. So, and that's the end, and then we get into the intro. So, just thought that was such a perfect scene, building up for what happens in this episode with Jimmy, and kind of him using Chuck's name in order to get what he wants in this episode. But really great to see kind of where those roots came from and how far Jimmy has come, right? From being that guy who's, singing a song with his brother and wanting, his brother to be involved in him, in his life and his celebration and everything at the bar there, to, totally smearing and using his brother's name to get what he wants, so... Anyways, crazy scene. I really did enjoy it. I thought it was such a great flashback. They do such a great job in flashbacks with this show. They would never show you a flashback that doesn't have some significance, if you know what I mean, right? So, really great scene. So anyways, that one is great. And Michael McKean, so I think that marks 3 times that he's come back this season, which is awesome stuff. You don't always think, right? Like a character dies in the season, oh, well, that actor must be done. But especially with this show, they've done a really good job bringing Michael McKean back at key points and key flashbacks, and it's been really great that he's actually come back and given these performances. So really, thanks to Michael McKean, and really great to see. All right, so let's get into Mike's storyline then in this episode and his kind of pursuit to track down Werner. So his crew so Mike and his crew begin their plan to track down Werner, and he says he has about a 3.5 hour time 3.5 hour time jump on them, and so they will have to kind of make up some time here. He says he will be on foot though. He doesn't have access to his passport or anything like that. So he will be, somewhere kind of close by, right? And I really like this scene with Mike delegating, actions to each of the men, right? And saying, you go there, you go here, you go, right? So really, kind of playing back to that Breaking Bad, Mike, where he's, in charge of a lot of guys and he's delegating where to go, and he's kind of running the show, right? And in this case, he is definitely running the show on this one, especially because this happened on his own watch, right? And he takes this pretty personal. So then we see that Mike goes to this travel wire building, right, to track him down, as he's figured that, he would have had to get his wife to wire money somewhere, and he thinks that this is the place. And so he pretends to be his brother-in-law, right, and looking for Werner, right, and thinks that he's, sick or something like that. And so anyway, so he actually talks himself into the back to look at the camera footage, and he sees what pamphlets Werner picks, so he thinks that he knows what hotel he's going to, and also gets a little bit of background on, where he is, what he's doing, right? And so then he leaves the travel wire, and Gus arrives. Victor first arrives, looks at Mike, and Mike gets the message, right? And so he goes with Gus into the back of the truck, right, to talk to Gus. And this was a great scene. Just the overall, just the silence at the very beginning of the scene where Mike gets in the truck, and they both sit there for, several moments, right, with nothing being said. Really, really great little thing there. And so they sit in the back of the truck, and Mike hands him the letter, right? Shows Gus this letter and that Werner wrote to him, saying, his plan was to come back, and he just wanted to see his wife and stuff like that. And then we learn also, which wasn't a big surprise to me at least, but Gus's plan is to track him down and kill him and his wife, who are meeting, right? He doesn't want to, he doesn't trust him anymore. He's going to kill him, right? That's just what it's going to be. And I'm not surprised by that either. So, but in this scene, kind of surprising, Mike actually vouches for Werner, and says he will find him so that they can avoid having to kill him, right? So he's going to find Werner before he, talks to his wife or meets up with his wife. And so then he doesn't have to die, right? Then Gus doesn't have to kill him. And of course, this doesn't really work out, but this is what Mike thinks at the time will be the best. And it just really is surprising, because this isn't something Mike would usually do. He wouldn't stand up for a guy like this in front of Gus and say, that he'll spare him, right? So obviously we know that they actually have built a relationship in these past months, and actually, he actually cares about Werner. So very, very, very different from the typical Mike we're used to, right? With showing, no sympathy for anyone or anything like that. So maybe outside of his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter, right? Outside of those two, we don't really see that at all from Mike ever. So this was something new. Then we see that Lalo is spying on Mike and Gus, right, through their journey to find Werner, right, or through their kind of plans, and he's trying to kind of lay low, right, and spy on them. And ultimately, I think he's trying to find Werner first, right, and get to him first and get, all these details out of him, and then he'll probably kill him anyways. And so Lalo plays actually a pretty big part of this episode here. And anyway, so he's following Mike, right, and Mike catches on right away, right? Like, this was great. And then one of maybe the best scenes of the episode here is they pull into a parking lot, or Mike pulls into a parking lot. And just a brilliant scene here where he basically comes up with this plan, right? In no time, right? Just in the spur of the moment, comes up with this plan and goes through the parking lot, exits the parking lot, and he inserts this chewing gum, right? So he chews this gum, puts in a little bit of a compress thing, and he inserts that into the ticket machine, which essentially stalls the machine and makes sure that no one else can get out, or at least not right away, right? Because that gum is going to be stuck in that machine. And of course, there's a guy right behind him, and then Lalo's behind that guy. So, anyways, just because it's a really difficult situation, Mike pulls out, and Lalo is stuck behind this guy. And we see even, what lengths that Lalo is willing to go to, in that he forces his way out and just, totally rear ends this guy out of this parking lot to get out and hopefully catch Mike. But he is too late, and Mike he's gone, right? He's miles down the road, and he has lost him. So all of a sudden, Lalo is kind of, already he's like, okay, maybe I'm not, maybe I don't know who I'm dealing with. And I totally agree, right? He doesn't know who the hell he's dealing with. He doesn't know who Mike is. And we definitely see that in this scene. Really great. So then we see Werner. He's just chilling out there at the hotel. That was really, really funny. He's in the floral shirt and the shorts and everything. So then he gets a call at the hotel, right, that he's staying at. And turns out that it's Lalo calling him. And I didn't totally expect this, but it turns out Lalo goes to that travel wire, right? Gets the phone number, I think, off of it. And that's how he ends up calling. So that's how he ends up calling Werner and gets his number, right? And gets the hotel that he's staying at. And it looks like he actually kills the guy at the travel wire. Like, I think he shoots him. And so that's, just showing that the difference between Mike and being kind of that sly, gentle, convincing guy to get information. And then there's Lalo, who just kills the guy, right? It climbs through the ceiling and shoots the guy. So definitely a parallel there, and showing what Mike's kind of personality is towards this. And everything he does, right? And so Lalo essentially is just trying to get more details out of him, right? He's asking him all these questions about the underground lab, which of course he doesn't know what it is yet. But basically Werner tells him a little bit about concrete or something like that, but nothing much else. And all of a sudden they're on the phone, and Mike appears. He arrives in person and grabs the phone from Werner. And this was such a great scene when Lalo is saying, Werner, right? And trying to get his attention. And it takes him only a few moments, and he realizes pretty quickly. He says, "Is this Michael?" Right? And Lalo totally realizes it. Mike realizes it. This was such a great scene. Or such a great moment, really. And they both kind of realize that each other is on the line, and they know, what is exactly going on. And Mike just hangs up. He doesn't even say anything to him. He just hangs up the phone, and it was really great. Lalo definitely. He kind of knows that he's been blown, but he doesn't really care either, right? Like, he doesn't really care at all. So, anyways, I thought that was a really badass scene by Mike, picking up the phone and just hanging up, not saying anything. So, anyways, that was really great. And so Mike has found Werner, and I was a little disappointed. I thought it would take a little bit longer. This is only about 20 minutes into the episode, and Mike has already found him. So, anyways, there's a lot of stuff that plays out after, though. So, in fairness, yeah, maybe it did, have to happen that quick, right? So then we see probably the most heartbreaking, well, maybe the second most heartbreaking even, scene of this episode is Mike brings Werner to this old racetrack out in the middle of nowhere, and he calls Gus. So, again, very emotional phone call here, and by this phone call, we know Werner's fate, right? If we didn't know already. So anyway, so he tells Gus about Lalo on the phone. Of course, he doesn't use his name or anything, but Gus catches on, and he knows exactly who he's talking about. And Gus is still insistent on killing Werner. He says there's no other way. And Mike tells him, make this a mistake. Can this be a mistake? And he's still fighting to keep Werner alive. And Gus, not budging, right? He is insisting that he has to be killed. And, if he's going to do it, right? He's going to kill him. But Mike says, let me do it. Let me handle it. Instead, if he has to die, I'll do it, right? And I do really think this was good because Mike obviously knows what Gus is going to do. It's going to be a lot different than Mike's killing of Werner, right? Probably going to involve maybe torture or something like that. It's going to be a more brutal death for Werner. And so Mike is kind of helping him out in this way too, even though he still has to kill him, which he doesn't want to do. So Anyways, Gus lets him do it. So then Werner pleads his case to Mike, right? And this is where Werner actually finally realizes what the stakes of his decision are, and that he ultimately has to pay for this. He has to die, right? Like, that's the only way out of this. And so he pleads his case to Mike, right? And Mike does let him call his wife to warn her that she's being followed to the motel, right? And basically save her life, because if she did go to that hotel and she left the airport, she most likely would have been killed by a couple of Gus's guys, and that would have been it, right? So he calls and she goes back, right? Presumably, we don't know for sure, but we assume that it worked. And so she goes back, so he saves her life, but Mike tells him that she will hear about an accident that happened, and she will find out that he is dead. So this is, again, Werner realizes it, and he says, okay, this is what's happening. And Mike says this is what's happening, right? Like, you're gonna die, and she's gonna hear it was an accident. Of course, she's not gonna hear what the truth of this all is, right? And so then Werner's final kind of words here is, final memorable words are, "Is there no other way, truly?" And this was heartbreaking to see, the facial expression by Mike, and he's, he doesn't say no, but you can just see on his face that there's no other way, right? And so this was very emotional. And then we see Werner, he walks out into the yard there and looks at the stars, and this is essentially just to, kind of be facing the other way so that Mike doesn't have to kind of shoot him while he's looking at him. And Mike follows him walking behind him, and when he comes to a stop, Mike pulls the trigger and shoots him in the back of the head, killing Werner. So this was a very emotional scene, heartbreaking, to be honest, to see Mike having to do this. And I honestly thought that Mike would let him live. I thought this whole story building up to this was that Mike was going to let him live, and that this was going to be, an instance where maybe Gus finds out and does something to Mike. And that is the turning point in Mike's life, where he doesn't take these chances anymore, and he actually goes through with killing people. And I really didn't think that he would do this. So anyways, but there's two sides to every coin, right? On the other side, okay, well, now he's killed him. Maybe this is the defining moment where he's going to kill people now, right? And maybe he develops that kind of, urge to kill them instead of letting them go, right? So anyways, I guess you could look at it both ways, but I really thought that Mike would let him live, and such an emotional scene here to see Mike having to do this. A great visual for this one. Insane. The cinematography was great on this one, showing the night sky and Werner walking out, and Mike pulling up the gun and firing. It was amazing. So really great job there with that. I feel like this scene wouldn't have been as impactful if we didn't see that final shot, so that was really great. Then to end off this one, is that Gus brings Gale. Gale makes another appearance, which was amazing. Every time I see him on screen, it's amazing. I get the chills. Thinking back to Jesse at his apartment door pulling that trigger. One of the most memorable scenes in Breaking Bad. But anyways, so he brings Gale to the underground lab area there, and Gale is so excited about it. He's like, well, I can do a cook now and whatever like that. And Gus just gets, suddenly flips the switch, right? And he tells him that he can only start cooking when it's ready. Right? They're not starting now. They're cooking when it's ready. And Gale gets a little spooked by this, right? Because I don't think he's seen the real side of Gus, or this side of Gus at least. And so he kind of gets spooked, and he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go upstairs now, right? So that was really great. And then we get maybe one of the best kind of, there's no dialogue here, but this is one of the most, I don't even captivating scenes, I guess. Seeing Gus look up at Mike and Mike look down at Gus, kind of, symbolizing that Mike has done the job, right? The job is done, and Gus kind of approving of that. So that was, it's amazing how the show can do that, right? There's no dialogue, no mouths are moving, but just the facial expressions alone can explain everything that's going on. And Jonathan Banks, Giancarlo Esposito, two of the best actors in television, and they really show it in this. Just an amazing little kind of stare down there between the two. So anyways, that just about wraps up that storyline there with Mike, and he gets the job done, and he unfortunately has to kill Werner. All right, so now let's get to Jimmy and Kim's story of this episode. I feel like it had a little bit less screen time, but maybe a little bit more, significance in the episode. So Jimmy is at Chuck's gravestone. We start off here, and he's pretending to cry, right, and be emotional, be very very somber mood, right. And so people are coming on his 1 year anniversary of his death, right, and so he's totally playing the part, right, and trying to act emotional and grieving, his brother's death 1 year later, and of course it's all part of his and Kim's plan, right. And so essentially what they're doing is they're building this kind of reputation, and building some stories here and some rumors to people on the bar association, and to maybe even people that will talk to the members of the bar association that are hearing his appeal, right. So all of this is just to impact those people and try to get them to learn a fake, picture of Jimmy, right? They're painting a picture that he's, grieving his brother and that he really does care about his brother. Well, that's really not the case, right? So then they attend this event, next, opening a new reading room dedicated to Chuck, right? He writes in a $23,000 check to get this room built and everything, and they invite a ton of attorneys there, and right, so they're getting this word around that Jimmy cares about his brother, and that he spent $23,000 to build this reading room, right? Like, that's a pretty big commitment, right? And so they're trying to build this, reputation back for this hearing, and again, it was just a really brilliant job, because they say, oh, it was anonymously donated, and then they have those kids that Jimmy worked with in Kushada again, and then he has her going around telling people, well, it was really Jimmy, right, but, keep it anonymous, right. So really just a brilliant job doing all that stuff. So then Jimmy sits on the board for the new scholarship in Chuck's name. So this was part of his will, his wishes and his will, I guess, like that, that he would give money to this scholarship. And so Jimmy, of course, is a sitting member on it, as his brother. And so we see that this whole process kind of plays out with all these, various students coming in, and then they take a vote on, which ones are going to get the scholarship. And so then we see a student, I think her name is Espinoza or Esposito, she comes in, and she's had a history of shoplifting, right? And so, of course, this doesn't go over well with the rest of the people on the board, but Jimmy kind of sees a little bit of himself in her, possibly, and actually argues that they should give her a chance, even though they've already voted, she didn't get it. He wants them to give her a chance and re-vote again. And of course, they don't agree with them, right? They're not going to change their mind about that after she's kind of been categorized as a shoplifter. They're not changing their mind about that one. So, anyways, they don't agree with him here, and Jimmy obviously, very disapprove. Not really, into this with the rest of them, and not approving of what they're saying, right? And of course, they're just recognizing the smartest kids and the most well-spoken, while he thinks that they should recognize other values, right? And so then we see here, he track this girl down, right, outside of the building, and talks to her afterwards. And this was, one of the most, real kind of brutally honest scenes or moments in this season for Jimmy. It was amazing, his true colors showing out in this whole episode, where he's being totally fake, right, in all scenes, really. And so he tells her that she should cut corners, right, do anything it takes to beat them, right. And this was a very powerful thing as well, right, because he's essentially describing himself, or even a younger self, or his younger self, to her, right, and his kind of motto in life to her, and telling her to be like him, essentially, right? And this was just really, really crazy. And, he says, they're on the 35th floor, you got to be on the 50th floor, and all this stuff, right? Inspiring her to be like that. And she's not really picking up on it, right? She's just a kid, and she doesn't. I don't think she understands all the stuff that Jimmy's telling her. But I thought it was really powerful, because Jimmy is trying to get through to her and actually be, his real self. He's actually showing his true colors here, and describing maybe his own journey in law, and just a really powerful scene. And then maybe the most powerful scene of the episode is he goes down to the parking garage, gets in his car after, obviously a disappointing day, doesn't get the kid that he wanted the scholarship, and he starts to, he tries to start his car, and it doesn't start, right? And so at this point, he actually breaks down crying. And we know this is real, right? Because you're like, Jimmy's crying. What? Like, this is fake, right? But we know it's real because no one else is there. He's finally alone and in his car, and no one else is there to kind of watch the show, right? And at this point, he breaks down and starts actually crying, right? And it's a very low point for him because really nothing is going his way, right? The car starting is just a really small thing compared to everything that's going on, but it's kind of the thing that tips it over and really tells him, like, okay, nothing is going my way right now, right? The scholarship didn't go through. I have to do all this stuff and fake and get reapproved by the bar, everything like that, right? I thought this was maybe one of the most powerful scenes of the season in that we finally see Jimmy alone and see his real emotions right now. And even like the other scene in, I believe it was episode 8, Kushada, where he's sitting in the spa with the boss who comes in and he's crying about Kim and him. But do we even know that that's real? Because again, now the boss is there and he has this audience again. So this was one of the only scenes where he's actually alone and we're really seeing those real emotions. So really powerful scene there and amazing acting by Bob Odenkirk in that scene. So then Kim and Jimmy go to the appeal hearing finally, right? So Jimmy decides that he's going to read Chuck's letter that he received in the will, right? And he thinks that this is going to win over the members. So he won't even have to do any talking. He's just going to read this letter and it's going to be enough to kind of impact them, right? And so he gets halfway through the letter, but he stops himself, right? And so this was kind of where he begins to improv, right? And he starts to make up some stuff here after he, he gets like 2 paragraphs in the letter and then he's like, okay, this isn't, getting exactly the attention that I wanted it to. I'm going to scrap that, right? And so anyways, of course, right, he improvs, right? And so we think at the time, it really seems like he's actually speaking from the heart, right? He's talking about him never being able to live up to Chuck, the first time he has been really honest and truly, showing his emotions for the first time. It all seems like that, right? And he even makes the members tear up. And it really, I even got chills in this moment. I'm like, he is finally being honest, right? He's finally showing his true emotions. And now, yeah, of course people will buy it because it's actually genuine, right? And I thought that amazing job for Jimmy. Such a great scene, right? That he's actually showing his real emotions and he's being honest and he's going to convince these members to readmit him to the bar, right? Everything's going to work out. And it was very emotional stuff here and him comparing himself to Chuck and all that stuff, right? So then, everything takes a turn at the end of the episode here. Kim and him walk out kind of celebratory, right? As Jimmy nailed it, essentially, right? So he really did nail it, right? So he got the members to even tear up, right? And really got them into it, really got them invested into it. And so both of them know, right? Both of them know that they have done it and that Jimmy is going to be readmitted. And so they're kind of celebrating and Kim, talks about him doing an amazing job, right? Saying, you did great, Jimmy. That's what you needed to show. And all of a sudden, Jimmy kind of turns that corner and all of a sudden he says, he becomes himself again, essentially, right? He puts on that mask, essentially, right? Or he, fakes his feelings again. And he reveals that he totally lied about all of it, right? And he's calling them, assholes and everything and saying that he just conned all of them, that it was all just another act. And honestly, I mean, somewhere through that, midway through his little speech there, I was like, okay, is this all real? Or is this a con? And I really did buy into it being real. I thought that was his real emotions. And then he reveals that it was all an act. And he's, calling them assholes and saying, they're suckers, that they bought into this con that he did. And it was really powerful because it really did seem real. And his ability to do that was a little scary. Like, it's a little frightening that he was able to put on that act. And anyways, and of course, this really gets to Kim. We see it on her face in the moment that he starts bragging about being able to pull off this con. She thought it was real. She really bought into this and thought it was real. And I think she's even kind of spooked that Jimmy was able to con her even into believing this. So anyways, and just a whole bunch of emotions going on with Kim right there, and her face displayed everything. So Jimmy then goes on about, how he sucked them into his act and everything like that, right? How they were even crying and all this stuff, like, really, really amazing stuff that he was able to pull all this stuff off, and now he's saying it was all fake and everything like that. And then this woman comes and shares the good news with Jimmy, right? Essentially says he's been reinstated. Doesn't out and out say it, but, she says good news, right? So Jimmy then goes with her, and she says, okay, you've been reinstated. You did a good job. You were able to get through to them. And then maybe the biggest part, the really, really great part of this one is he asks her for a form to practice under a different name. And right away, Kim is like, what? Like, she just got this whole thing put on her, right? That it was all a con and that she got conned as part of this as well. And now she's hearing that he wants to practice under a different name. And she's like, wait, what? What's going on? And Jimmy turns back to Kim and says, it's Saul Goodman. Amazing, amazing ending. I'm getting chills just now talking about it. Amazing ending here to the season. Then we get the credits playing after that one. It's all good, man. Amazing line to end off the season, and crazy stuff. And you see again Kim's face in this one after hearing that. She is so, like I said, so many emotions, so much stuff going on, and her face displays it perfectly. I mean, I think we're feeling the exact same way as Kim is even in that moment. So what an ending to this episode. All right, so in terms of our rating, wrapping up this review, I'm going to give it a 4.9 out of 5. I really did enjoy this episode. I still think that maybe something stupid. Episode 7 was a little bit better. I did really enjoy episode 8. I thought 7, 8, 9, and 10 was an amazing streak of really great episodes here. Like the last, 4 episodes here of the season were just amazing. So anyways, just another great episode. One of my big negatives and why this score isn't perfect, because it was a very close to being a perfect episode here, is where is Nacho? Nacho didn't have any screen time in this episode, and he barely had any time in last episode too. And I was really disappointed with that because they set up at the beginning of this season such a big arc for Nacho and his character, and saying, okay, and huge arc at the end of season 3 with swapping out the pills of Hector and playing a part in his whole, journey here with his stroke, and now he's kind of back in that wheelchair, ringing the bell, right? So they set up all this stuff with Nacho, and then we never really got a payoff for any of it, and I was really disappointed with that. I understood totally why he wasn't in a few of the episodes there in the middle. I think it was up to episode 8 where he wasn't in, I think, 5, 6, 7 or something like that, or 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe. And I totally got it, right? I totally get it. He was injured, he's healing again, and a lot of time went by too. So anyways, I thought this was okay, but we don't even see him in this finale. That was probably the biggest negative for this one. I was really disappointed that they build up this whole story and then we don't even see him in this finale and we don't really get a proper payoff for it. So anyways, I'm guessing that we'll see a lot of him in season 5 and see his story play out. I also think that season 5, if they decide to do a season 6, I still think season 5 is going to be Nacho's last season and maybe Kim's as well. So we'll have to see where his story goes, but I'm looking forward to seeing him as we did not see him in this one. Amazing end of the episode, like I said, crazy stuff. For the last line in the season to be, it's Saul Goodman, you know what's coming, and that was really great. And again, building some great things for next season, like I already talked about with Nacho. Jimmy's going to be a lawyer again, practicing under the Saul Goodman name. A lot of stuff going on with Mike and Gus, right? With this underground lab, they still got to get that done. Whether they're going to have maybe a time skip and maybe it'll already be done. And then maybe Gail will be already cooking or something. I don't know what's going to go on here, but really great things for next season. And then, of course, Lalo going at Gus maybe next season too. So we'll have to see. And of course, we know that Lalo plays a part in Saul's story or Jimmy's story because he mentions him in Breaking Bad when he's introduced. So we know that Lalo is going to be a part of this kind of story going forward, and we're going to have to see where he kind of fits into it. So anyways, and ultimately we are getting closer to Saul Goodman. I'm so excited for next season. I think it's going to be maybe the best season yet. This season was, I feel, the best season of the show. And I think it's only going to get better as we get closer to Saul Goodman. So anyways, that was great. Favorite character for this one is going to be Jimmy McGill, hands down. Bob Odenkirk, an amazing job. This was maybe his most impressive episode of the season in terms of acting and putting on this putting on this amazing show, you know, and you know, faking his emotions and putting on this mask in front of everybody. And then even that scene where he's alone in the car and he actually breaks down crying, right? We see that real emotion. So an amazing job by Bob Odenkirk. And Jimmy's story is going to be an amazing one going forward, especially next season, as he assumes the at least the practicing name of Saul Goodman. So anyways, guys, that'll just about do it for my review of Better Call Saul season 4 episode 10, but also the season in general. Thank you so much for watching the reviews. If you've been watching since the beginning, now you're here. I appreciate it. I'm so thankful for that. Anyways, if you just tuned in a couple, I do appreciate that as well. Or just this one. Anyways, so thank you so much for watching this review. Really looking forward to next season. I think it's going to be awesome. You know, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, I'll be watching, and I will be back with some reviews for that season as well. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for the recent support on the channel. I do really appreciate it. We're almost at 200 subscribers as of this video, so really thankful for that, and I really do appreciate it. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching again. What an amazing season of Better Call Saul, and wow, really great. So anyways, let me know what you thought of this one. Let me know what you thought of the season, and really like to discuss and all that. So we will see you next time in my next review video, and hopefully see you next time for Better Call Saul Season 5.